So welcome everybody. I'm your MC today. My name is Jessica and I'm representing BWA. So I'm just going to quickly share so I can just go through a couple of things before I hand over to Bev. So we want to acknowledge that we live and work on sovereign Indigenous land that has been lived and danced on and celebrated on for over 120,000 continuous years. We pay our respects to all Indigenous elders, past, present and emerging. We celebrate our Indigenous sisters in business. Just a little bit, I won't say much about me, but what I can say is that I've been a member with BWA for over 3 years now. I've always got highly involved in facilitating sessions, but also being part of, many presentations and sessions by other members. And what I love is that's a real collaborative effort. So everyone who's on this call and hasn't joined, for me, it's been really helpful, to give to the community, but also to get back so many skilled women in this collective. So it's just wonderful. I'm a coach and a facilitator, and I've just accepted the role as Head of Learning and Development at BWA. So hopefully you'll see a lot more in that space as well. Our vision at BWA is where everyone is valued and can contribute, and I can absolutely attest to that. Since I've been part, actually Lynn Hawkins, who's the founder of BWA, has always pushed me to be able, she would always ask me the question, how do you want to contribute? What do you want to get out of it? What can you give back? So it's a real, collaborative of women where this is encouraged and we don't just talk about it. Our shared mission is to achieve our vision by helping each other achieve goals and dreams, building a network of influence and creating opportunities. And again, I can only attest to that. Many opportunities have come out of this work that I've seen here. And I can't wait to hear from Bev today. It's such an important and interesting topic. The BAW Collective, you'll see business owners, entrepreneurs, directors, executive managers, professionals and consultants, C-suite and women on boards, leaders and emerging leaders. The 5 areas of development, and that's something that we really want to focus on a little bit more over the next 12 or 24 months as well, is leadership. So we'll looking into, offering more in terms of coaching and mentorship, and we want lots of people on board as well to be able to help with that, but also business improvement, personal growth, influence and profile, and connecting, of course, is really important as well. Our shared values are inclusion and diversity, courage and honesty, collaboration, open-mindedness, conscious care, positive energy, and optimism. And the way you benefit from it, and I'm not going to read it out, but the way I benefit from it, I really feel that connection of that. I've got women in this collective who have my back, and I can have other women's back with the things we know, the things we can do well, but also just friendship and connections. Without any of these sponsors, none of this would be possible. So we've got Catco Enterprises, Solo Accounts, a new partnership with Trans University Australia. We've got big plans with them as well. Hawkins Marketing, Intech Teams, 3 Drops, Pauline Bright, Inspiration Source, Evolving Women, Platinum Mix, and LG Accounting Solutions. And of course, I have to read them out because without our sponsors, we wouldn't be able to do any of this work. And with no further ado, I'm going to hand over to Bev Ryan. And Bev, I'm actually going to let you introduce yourself because I think you'll do a much better job than I do. So I'm going to stop sharing and over to you, Bev.
Thank you very much for having me here. Just hope all the technology works. So I'm assuming you can see my slides, Smart Women Publish, the opening slide, is that right? Great, okay. Well, thanks for having me here, and I'm now a member of BWA. I think I joined at the start of this year, and it's been a really wonderful investment. And, I thought about it long and hard, and I just felt I was ready to join a collective of women across the country, and at that stage, events were happening locally, but at the moment, it's all online. And one of the great advantages of everything being online is just making connections with people we wouldn't normally meet. So I'm really happy with my investment of time and energy and good humour into BWA. So today I'm talking about publishing for women, and most of my clients are business women, but I also do talk about the value of publishing for women who are in professions as well, and some of that will be part of my conversation today. And Just make sure everything works here. Here we go. So an inspiring quote to begin, and this is so true. Seth Godin said, the book that will most change your life is the book you write. And that's definitely not dismissing the books that we read, but there's a huge sort of layers of benefits come from self-publishing, and I'll be covering off some of those today. So I'm Bev Ryan. I'm a business book coach and a book production manager. So what that means, as a book coach who helps people write business books or non-fiction books, I work at the start of the process. So I can work with somebody who's got an idea for publishing, or they just might have a desire, but they really haven't even got clarity about what book they would write. And so I take them through a process called the book blueprint process. And I can also work with people as they're writing their books to give them accountability and structure. And also I've got a team of people I work with to produce books. So I've got editors, graphic designers, and I do some of the work myself, some of the proofreading and managing the process as a production manager. So so I guess I've worked with women from the start, from an idea right through to the end, or maybe just the book coaching at the start, or just the production at the end. So my main website is smartwomenpublish.com. These are some of the books I've produced for my clients, and I've had a hand in either the coaching and production, book cover design, that sort of thing. Today is really just an overview, so I haven't really got time to drill down to great details to some of the things. So I really am still giving you a brief overview of what I do. I've been invited last year and this year to sit on the judging panel of the Australian Business Book Awards, which are a wonderful initiative for Australia, driven by Michael Hanrahan and Andrew Griffiths. And you may have come across them before, both very, very professional and very credible people within the publishing industry in Australia. And also I'm currently studying a book coaching program, which is just wonderful. It's just so exciting. So I'm allowed to say I'm an advanced non-fiction book coach certification member when I get the credentials by the end of the year. Hopefully that's what I can use the full label. And like I said, that's adding a lot of value to what I do. So later on at the end of my session today, I want to give you a link to where you can download a free copy of my book, which is Smart Women Publish, which I've got here. And it's for, as I said, for business women and women in professions who might be thinking about how they could write a book to give them visibility and credibility. Okay, enough about me. So why self-publish? So good question. I'm not going to talk about traditional publishing today. We've really moved to a position in the industry where it is so easy to self-publish. It still costs money, obviously, and you still need professional help. And I would always encourage people to, if they're going to go down the self-publishing path, to invest in professional guidance, as in at least a professional editor and at least a professional designer minimum. People do play around with some of these things themselves in the DIY part of publishing, but that I'm not really talking about that. I'm talking about professional publishing, so that you end up with a book that really could sit on a bookshelf in a airport or whatever, and your book would look credible and a quality book that would sit proudly on the shelf with other traditionally published books as well. So why do this thing? Why put yourself through it? I think this is one of the best summaries of how a book can benefit you in business. Now, Dory Clark, if you have not come across Dory Clark, I'd highly recommend her as somebody to follow on social media. So just starting at the bottom here, Dory's the author of 3 books, Entrepreneurial You, Reinventing You, and Stand Out. So she has used publishing to build her profile. And just an interesting little backstory there. With Dory's first book, she actually just interviewed 50 experts and used their stories to produce her own first book, which is a really credible way of going about publishing. If you're sort of doubting your own voice, you can take that approach, interview other people. A couple of things happened there. What she interviewed them about is how did they use, or how did they become experts in their subject matter, in their industry. And by interviewing them, she created her first book, which was Entrepreneurial You, I think. That was her first one. And but she learned everything she needed to know herself. She learned in the process of writing her book. So she then applied everything she learned and is now regarded as an expert and runs courses actually called Become a Recognised Expert. So her quote there is interesting what she said. And this goes back to Lynn was asking, wanted to ask a question later in the session about at what stage in your business would you be best to publish. I really love her statement there that it's valuable at any stage in your career, but it's especially important when others may doubt your expertise. So I think too often women wait till they feel like an expert before they'll consider publishing, but it actually works the other way around. In the process of gathering the information you need, basically you're researching, and you, in the process of writing, you will become an expert on so many more things than you may feel like you're an expert on now. So the process of writing a book will actually elevate your expertise internally and externally. Okay. So these are the sort of the dot points of what publishing will do for you. First of all, this one's really, really important. It will give you, you have to kind of solidify and get clarity around what the vision for your business is. There's no point in writing a book if the rest is quite vague. And it will give you clarity about who you are, what matters to you, what you want to stand up and be seen for, what direction you want to take your business. A book may be about a topic or a certain subject matter, but it's got to fit within a bigger vision. And you have to be really clear about what that is. It's, as I said, going to take you through an enormous amount of personal growth. There'll be doubts, there'll be fears, all of those things. They'll kind of hit you in the face as soon as you get started. But it's pretty much like, you know, most of the time when we start something new, this is what's happening. This is a side effect, a side benefit of it, is personal growth. I think whenever you, particularly you go public with something, whether you're writing music, making a film, writing a book, there's that personal challenge of, my God, who am I to do this thing? So business growth, if you write the right book that is related to what you do in business, and Esther, you were mentioning your clients, it sounds like they're writing books that really benefit their business very strongly. So they've got that path very clear. It'll grow your brand. A book doesn't have to look like your brand, but it has to be quality. So you need, your brand should be, it may be relaxed, personal, whatever, but it should always be quality. So your book has to reflect that as well. It gives you visibility. There's lots of things you can do with the book. There's some great stories about how people have used their book to introduce themselves to people of note, and then have been invited to step up and speak at events, all sorts of things they never dreamed they could do. It does give you credibility, again, if you've done it properly. If it's well written, it's well edited, it looks good, definitely huge credibility there. And connection. I mean, the story I used before with Dory Clark, the fact that she reached out to 50 people who she respected, who she saw as further down the path of business growth. She reached out to them and interviewed them for her book. Suddenly those 50 people know who she is, and they will return the favour. And so the connections, you just can't put a value or a price on those. They're enormously beneficial, and they should be beneficial to all parties. And your book can bring you opportunities because of those connections. As I said, that you might end up with opportunities you never even saw as possible. So I just wanted to share one story of a client of mine who wrote her book, I think 2015, we worked on this. So I'm going back in time, but her story of the things, the things that have happened to Philippa because of her book and since her book, I think are really valuable stories. So Philippa had been working in corporate, Seven Media, Channel 7 Media, something like that. Started up her own consulting business and was doing quite well. So as a consultant, she wrote this book, Rules of Social Engagement. and it's to help businesses figure out how to use social media, what their social media campaigns were about. So it's quite a complex level, not just how to use Instagram, but how to develop campaigns, social media campaigns to market your business. And one thing she did do that worked really well, she put a lot of resources on her website, and in her book she referred to extra resources that people could then go to and download from her website. So she was using her book to bring people back to her site. So that went really, really well. And she went on to do a couple of things. That's a photo of her book launch there. The book's laid out on the table. She had a big launch, invited influential people to her launch, so suddenly people knew about her and the book. It was the same year she won a BET Women in Media People's Choice and National Digital Finalist. So that came about not long after her book was out, but she used her book as part of her application process, the fact that she was writing a book, and it always does add credibility as an awards applicant, the fact you've published, as opposed to other people who may be in your industry but have not taken that step. The next year she won an International Independent Publishing Book Award. So I every now and then I have to remind myself, well, I produced that book, so I could take some of I always give the credit to Philippa, but I should remember that I was part of the process of making the book happen, so that was a really cool thing. And the year after that, she then won another international award, Global Book Excellence Award. So as a consequence of the visibility that she gained, she was actually offered a very lucrative position to come back into corporate. So she pretty much closed down a consulting business and has gone back into corporate Australia, moved back to Sydney for a high-level position within Accenture, where she's leading teams of people who are developing marketing campaigns for other organisations and businesses. So her book was very instrumental in taking her from a consultant back into corporate, which she'd left, but at a much higher level. So I think that's one of the things a book can do for you is just raise you up a couple of levels so that you're then seen, your expertise is obvious, people value it, and basically you can ask for more money. Okay, so I think that's a good summary of a good sort of a case study of what can come from writing a book. Okay, so I feel like I'm going very fast here, Jessica. Am I going very fast? I can't. Sorry.
Yeah, I don't think you're going too fast. I think
okay, cool. That's good.
Great pace. We'll stop you if we think it's too fast.
Yeah. So just wave your hand at me if someone's got a question. If you're watching, because I'm just watching the slides. So, but if you notice somebody's got a question,
yeah, absolutely. Then I'll raise my hand. I'll unmute them. Great. Absolutely.
And we also will have a question and answer at the end. So that will be. So people always want to know how to self-publish, and this is an overview of the steps. Now it's very easy to. Where are we? First of all, planning your book, and I will go through these in detail. So this is just a little diagram plan. Obviously, you write your book, then editing, then book cover design is really critical. That's why I've given it its own little number 4 space on its own. Your book cover's a very important part of the whole process. Then the page layout comes along after that. Always has to be a proofread. There's so many proofreads of your book by a professional, not yourself, because you become blind to the mistakes in your book. Then there's the publication of print books and ebooks. And if you are self-publishing through various systems, and I'll talk about them in more detail, you can then become a self-publisher or a publisher with global distribution of your own books, which is pretty exciting stuff and not to be underestimated. So that's the overview, and I'll just go through each of those in a little bit more detail. So planning carefully. Obviously, if you might have a really clear business plan, a really clear plan for where your book wants to go, and it is, it's a logical process. We're talking here about non-fiction. I'm not talking about memoirs, just non-fiction books, which are taking your reader through a learning experience, basically. It is important that they're logical, but it's also really, really important that you think about your reader and what journey they go on. Now, if you're writing fiction, the protagonist in fiction that is going on the journey and going through transformation and change is the character in the book. When you're writing non-fiction, the protagonist and the person that's going through a process of change is actually your reader. It's not you. You have to think about your reader as a character and think, well, how am I going to put my content together so that this reader will go through a process of change as they read my book. And as soon as you start thinking that way and you understand your reader, you then have to think, well, where are they at the start of my book? What's their pain point? What are they struggling with? Why do they want a book like mine? What steps or stages will I take them through in my book? And where do I want them to be at the end of my book? So then you can understand your starting point, your finishing point, and a way to get them. So that arc of change that we talk about in fiction, which is your character's arc of change, you're applying that arc of change to your readers. And that's why the planning stage is so important. Now, as a book coach, I take people through the planning stage through a book blueprint, which is actually quite an in-depth, I think it's 13 steps, and some of them are quite basic, but some of them are quite detailed, to the point where you are breaking down your book into, not into steps, but a much deeper study of that arc of change for the reader, and coming up with some chapters that will help you find your voice. That's all within the book blueprint. So I would always recommend that you take the time to plan properly before you start writing. If somebody just jumps into this stage, they're going to really struggle, because they'll sort of write themselves around in circles or into a corner or up against a wall, because they haven't really thought through what I've just been talking about with the book blueprint. Actually, I've just finished working with a client and taking her, well, she contacted me because she was stuck. She'd started writing, she was quite a way into her book, or into planning her book, and had done some writing, but she'd stuck. But she was aware that she was just going nowhere, and I just took her right back to the beginning, and we went through the book blueprint together, and she got so much more clarity about how her book should look. So now she's going back and kind of redoing what she's done already, because she wasn't thinking about the reader. She was thinking about, how can I put everything I know into this book, which is not what your book's for. It's not, and you don't have to put everything you know into your book. You might write 3, 4, 5 books, and you'll be developing as you go. And so your book 2 or 3 might be something you hadn't even dreamed that you would write when you started book 1. So writing, if you've got a plan, it will be so much easier. But as you're writing, you also will improve things. So nothing is set in concrete. So what you plan to write, even though you might have done a really thorough plan, as you write, you might realise, oh, actually, there's more to this, or so you'll be making adjustments as you go. But don't worry about the editing; that comes later. Don't paralyse yourself with thinking you have to write perfectly the first time, because you don't. Okay, so when you feel like your manuscript is finished or near finished, you can start working with an editor. Some people work with editors as they write, so that's kind of a combination of book coach editor. Other times people might work with a book coach to get their book finished, and then that goes off to an editor to do a much deeper dive into the manuscript. But it is really important to invest in an editor, and editing has got several layers to it as well. So there's like a one edit, which is less expensive, but it's not as thorough as having 2 edits. Sometimes people might even pay for 3, but an editor will work with you as a self-publisher. So they'll do a first round of edit and get that back to you with changes, and then you'll go through it and then agree, disagree, make changes. It'll go back to them. So I pretty much always recommend 2 layers of editing with you in the middle. Then the book cover, this can actually happen. I mean, you might do your book cover as you're writing your book, that's fine, or you might do your book cover as the editor is working on the content, that's fine as well. But the book cover is, I guess it's the dressing of your book. That's why it's so important. It's the decisions about a book cover are a bit, they feel like sometimes like the decisions you make when you're going to paint your house or design your house or do your business branding, all the fonts and the colours and the look and the feel, all of those things. So it is really, again, really important to work with a good designer who kind of gets that. The more you understand your readers and what you're trying to achieve, and the more you can articulate that to a book designer, the better results you'll get. Sometimes it can be a long process to get the right book cover. Other times it can be quite short. So there is no set time for a book cover to come to life. But if you're not getting what you want from a book designer, you can keep pushing or find another designer. But again, the flip side of that is if you're self-publishing and you know nothing about design, sometimes you should just trust the designer. So it's, sort of figuring that out for yourself. It's not about you. The cover should not be you've got to be proud of the cover, but it's got to be the right cover for the book for the right people. It definitely stands alone as a separate part of the process. And once the cover has been designed, then a designer will figure out the page layout because the pages have to fit with the cover. I've got another client that we're working together at the moment, and her book is for mothers of early teen daughters, and there's artwork in this book. There's artwork, so it was important that the cover. First of all, she came up with a very modern design for the cover, but there was kind of naive art in the book, so that they kind of didn't work together. So, the cover and the content have got to work closely together. And at this stage, once you've finished your page layout, and I've just tucked this one in here because it has to be proofread again. I mean, it is a separate process, but I've just tucked it in there for the purposes of our slides. Don't ever just get your book finished by the designer and the designer says, yep, page layout's done, it's ready to go to print. Don't ever just send it straight to the printer. Just get it proofread again because there'll always be changes, always be corrections to make. Okay, next one. Okay, so once your files are finished, your book cover's finished, your page file's finished, those files can go off in various directions. So most of our clients we will send the files to a print company because they always want a print, a box of books, at least a box of books. It's something very exciting about doing print runs. Some people think they'll only do ebooks, but I sort of feel like they're missing out on a big thrill if they only do an ebook because you kind of can't hold an ebook. There's a lot to be said for print copies. So what we normally do is print copies and ebook versions. Now, the systems that I use, Ingram Spark is a pretty amazing company. If you're new to self-publishing, I'd suggest you have a look at Ingram Spark, spelled INGRAMSPARK. It enables you to become a self-publisher. You set up your own account with Ingram Spark, and the print files, which are PDF files, they would go into Ingram Spark. And Ingram Spark actually also is a print company, so you can put your print files with Ingram Spark and you could order 10 copies, 100 copies, whatever. And they will print your books and they'll end up sent to your door in a box. And you can also put your ebook files in, which is the format for those is EPUB, so going into a bit more detail. You can put your ebook files into Ingram Spark and they can actually go onto Mobi files as well. You can put your ebook onto Amazon through Ingram Spark. Also, your print book on Ingram Spark will end up on Amazon as well. Now, what I've been doing with my clients is putting a Amazon Kindle version up on Amazon, which is a different file format. It's a Mobi file. The short answer to all of that, or the short explanation of that, is that when somebody wants to find your book, they go to Amazon, they'll be able to either buy a print book or an ebook. Ebook gets downloaded, print book, the order goes off to Ingram Spark. Ingram Spark prints one copy of the book and posts it out to them. So it's a pretty amazing system. Now, the alternative to all of that is you can sell those files off your own website as well. You can sell your book from your own site so that you are capturing the data of who buys your book, and you can build your database that way. And then you've got personal contact with the people who bought your book. So that's also an option to do as well. Now, because you have set yourself up as a global publisher, well, the global part comes through Ingram Spark. They've got catalogues that are global catalogues. So booksellers all over the world can find your book in the catalogue, list your book. Other websites like Booktopia, whatever, can find your book as an ebook and a print book. They can list your book on their site. So this is all happening without, you don't have to go in there and do the work. You are in Ingram Spark's catalogues. Other booksellers find you in the catalogue. They list your book. And you should receive payment, I think once a month or once a quarter, payment for any sale or part of sales. So pretty exciting opportunity. I might just have a pause there. I'll just, if anyone's got any questions right at this time.
If I actually have a question about the book cover.
Yes.
When you say work, with your manager and the designer, someone said to me to not have your own photo or face on your book cover because you change so much and you might, sell it for years and years and years. What's your take on having a more general design compared to having a photo of yourself?
I think every client I've had we've put their photo on the back cover because there's always, we do a little author bio somewhere on the back, so we always put a photo with that, just because people really want to see, people want to see who this is. I mean, if you're doing a cover with flaps, which you can't do in Ingram Spark, but you could always put your photo in the flap. I've done books for a couple of clients. There we go, there's a flap. Esther's got a book there with a flap with the author photo. I've done a couple of covers where the authors are on the front of the book because they wanted visibility. They want to be, they just wanted lots of reasons why. I'll just explain why a client did that earlier this year. She's a financial planner and had worked within within NAB for 10, 11 years. She left NAB, she set up her own financial planning business. But because she'd worked within the depths of NAB, nobody knew her individually. And she put herself on the front of her book because she wanted to be seen in that space, and she wanted people to recognise her face. And she and she's using the book to launch her business. So going back to Lynn's question earlier on, which she put onto the questionnaire about what's the right time to launch a book, it really can be used like Helen is using it to launch her business. Other times people will use it just to grow their business. So there's no right or wrong answer to that. So I think if you're going to put yourself on the front cover, just invest in a great photo, obviously. And I think Helen, she took her 3 photographers to get the photo she wanted. So she obviously willing to invest a certain amount till she got what she needed. And it's a great photo, so it's well worth it. So again, there's no right or wrong answers. I wouldn't put, I thought about putting myself on my own cover, but I just couldn't get a photo that I really liked. This is going back a couple of years. But I knew, because of my age, I knew if I put myself on my front cover, then I'm not, I would be probably attracting a certain aged audience, which is great because that's who I like to work with anyway. So, but I decided not to do it. So, it's lots of, you just have to work through that yourself to decide that. Yeah, thank you for that question.
Thank you.
So
does anyone else have a question? I'm just going to check if someone has put their hands up.
That's great, because I've gone through that pretty quickly, I think.
Bev, it's Serena here. I did have a quick question.
Yes.
Just with the writing and editing process.
Mm-hmm.
Is there any stage you go through in checking that you haven't inadvertently veered into an area that might be copyrighted by someone else, or that might be perceived as, leaning into their content a little bit? Certainly when you work in, a number of fields like, well, with brand and marketing, my field, there's a lot out there. And so one of the things I'd be worried about is inadvertently stepping into someone else's content. Is there any process you look at to ensure you don't do that?
That is, in the self-publishing world, that really is the author's responsibility. I guess that is one of the big differences between traditional publishing and self-publishing. Is within traditional publishing, you've got the experts, you've got editors and marketers, lawyers, and all sorts of people within the company who are going to help the author sort of avoid those sorts of traps. But as a self-publisher, every responsibility comes back to you. So I guess in the writing phase, as long as people are not going onto websites and just doing cut and paste off websites, or going into research material and just taking ideas without referencing them, then they might get into strife at some stage. So if you are writing a non-fiction book and you are referencing people through your book, then just do it properly. It doesn't have to be like an academic paper. We normally, like if somebody references an author or something they found online, they might just we use little subscripts, like little numbers 1, 2, 3 through the manuscript, and then at the back we'll put a reference page and just reference each of those numbers and say what the source of that is. But no, if you're going to do a direct quote from somebody, you can do a short amount. There's copyright, of course, the CCA, Copyright Council Australia, Australian Copyright Council, who's got a lot of information to help people with these aspects. But yeah, so I think if you feel like you are citing something else, someone else's idea, just reference them. That's fine.
Thank you.
Yeah. And editors, sorry, go on.
No, that's okay. I thought you were finished, Bev.
Yeah.
Is that all right? Yeah, no, I have a question about writing software. You know, I've heard of Scrivener, for example. Not sure if that's more for fiction book writers, or would you recommend something like Scrivener? Or I'm a user of Microsoft Word myself, or Google Docs.
Yep.
What's your take on that?
I know people who use Scrivener love it. There's always a learning period with everything, isn't it? So I've seen it. I've seen how it works. I haven't used it myself because I just didn't feel at the time that I wanted to go through the learning period, but I don't think it's very complicated. It makes moving information very easy. Like in a Word document, obviously, you might highlight it, cut it, move it, paste it, whatever. Whereas in Scrivener, the information is like in little boxes. You just move the boxes around. So yeah, definitely, I know people who use it love it. So, and it's not very expensive. So if you're prepared to put in the time to learn how to use it, then you probably would find it hugely beneficial. I think within Word, normally what I suggest to people when they're planning their book, and just making notes and gathering stuff, they would set up, I normally suggest they set up a separate Word document for each chapter. And as they're building the content, they've just opened up chapter 4 and put some content in there. But there will come a point much further down the track where all of that does need to go back into one big document. But it's much easier to move bits around with smaller documents, and easier to find things when they are spread out into separate documents. Yeah, writing a book it takes a while. It takes time, and I'll talk about. Maybe I'll just do that here because I didn't put it in any slides. Just the time frame it takes to write a book. So if somebody comes to me for book production, so they say, well, I've got the manuscript's finished or nearly finished. I'll be finished it next week or whatever. I will always suggest that they allow 3 months for the editing, the design, the proofreading, getting the files sorted out, getting the book files to the printer. The printing might even take it just over the 3 months. So 3 or 4 months ideally. If someone is to contact me and say, look, I've finished my book and I want print copies of it within 6 weeks, I'll say, find somebody else who can do that, because it's just not the way I want to work. I don't want to be frantic and stressed by books. There'll be teams here or there that could manage that, but and they probably might be better off to manage it themselves, but they need to find an editor who's not busy at all. They need to find a graphic designer who's not doing anything else, and so that they could get this done quickly, but it could be very, very stressful. So for the whole writing, so if the production stage takes 3 months, people could write and publish a book within a year. I mean, easily, if you put the time into the writing stage. I find this a really, it's like how much time have people got. Some people have got lots of time, some don't. So there's no easy answer to that. There are programs out there, and I'm sure you've seen them, where people promote that you could write a book in a weekend. I mean, you could plan a book in a weekend. I'm not sure how you could write a book, but you could definitely plan it. I'm not sure. You can dictate books and get the dictations transcribed, but then they still have to be edited because they're a real mess. If you're just speaking aloud the content without writing it, then it's going to be a mess when it's transcribed. So then someone still has to play with it. So I cannot promise how long it would take anyone to write a book, but production 3 months, writing whatever. Give yourself time though. Don't rush it. But the other flip side of that is if you don't have a deadline, you probably will never do it. So it's finding that happy medium, isn't it, between a time frame that is going to push you to meet a deadline, but it's not going to exhaust you and it's not going to drive you crazy, and you're not going to give up in desperation or exasperation. So it's finding the happy medium. And the other thing about self-publishing is you're likely to not have an external deadline, so you do need to find a way of making your own deadlines or having some accountability factor or someone that you're working with. Okay, so at this point, I was just going to go over quickly what do you do once your book's produced, because then you are stepping into the wonderful stage of marketing, which is a whole nother ballgame. And some people they love the marketing stage, but they just can't handle the writing stage. But they'll do it. They'll slog through it. There's other people who love the writing stage because it's just what they do. Get to the marketing stage and they're just horrified that they might actually have to speak to people and go public and whatever. So totally different mindset, totally different set of activities between publishing it and marketing it. But I think one of the people I admire, and I haven't written his name in here anyway, but you might, if you're serious about wanting to know more, there's a Canadian guy called Tim Grahl. His surname is spelled Grahl, and he helps people market books, sorry. He's got his first book, I think he wrote, is Your First 1,000 Books. So he wrote a book helping people to sell their first 1,000 books. He is paid quite handsomely by well-known authors to help them market their books. But he also runs some quite well-priced programs on how to set up your author platform and how to market your books. And one of the things he says over and over is that you just pace it out. You don't have to launch your book and sell 1,000 copies in the first week, because then it's likely to disappear. I mean, I know, Esther, you mentioned before about someone who's launched and sold lots of books and can use the bestseller tag because they've done that, and that does carry a lot of weight. But other people sort of don't want to particularly exhaust themselves with that activity at the start. It really depends on how you want to work and what you want to do. Just to explain there, you can launch a book and become bestseller. You can launch a book and put your ebook up on Amazon, and then you might do a really hard campaign and have lots of people helping you promote that ebook and sell it at a really low price. Some people even give it away for a week or 2 weeks. And if enough people know about it and enough people do it, you might hit the bestseller in a category on Amazon. And some people choose really obscure categories and become the bestseller in that category, and then use the little badge on the front of their book saying they're an Amazon bestseller, which is all totally legitimate. I know one of my clients, we wrote the book first, then she did a campaign within Amazon with her ebook, and it was Women in Business. There was a couple of women's memoirs, I think it was. Anyway, she did hit bestseller for that category for a day or two. So then we redid the cover with the Amazon bestseller sticker on the cover. So it is quite doable. But I think most people in business are kind of running a business. So if that's who you are, just pace it out. Just do a couple of things every week to get your book out. And it might be posting your book out to people of influence in your industry. Just package up a couple of books every Friday and post them out, and put something with that, and or develop a list of people who run podcasts, and every week contact 2 or 3 people with podcasts and suggest how you, if you were on their podcast, how you could help their listeners, and see if you can get some interviews. So you make it doable, make it something that doesn't exhaust you and frustrate you. But it definitely has to be done. So I think when you become an author, I think that top part section there is really important. Now, also, as an author, you can reach out to get publicity, or reach out to PR people and get some coverage, but it's never going to be just about your book. The fact that you've written a book does give you credibility with the media, but they want to know more than that. They want to know more about your story, or the point. What is it you're trying to say? Or what is it you're trying to impact? What bigger cause are you working to change? So now you might write a book about women in business, but your story, the media might be interested in a story which features the fact that only a low percentage of women are CEOs in corporate Australia. So that might be the point of the story. You might have a comment about that, and you might say, well, as author of this book, here are some things that can be done about that bigger problem. So you really do need to know how your book fits with bigger issues. And that goes right back to the start. The very first point I made right at the start is, before you start to read a book, know what your vision is, know what you care about, and get some clarity about what it is that you want to be seen for and speak up about. What's your point? What's the point of what you do? What's the point of your business? What's the point of your book? And how does all of that relate to something bigger that's happening in the world? And how do you want to make changes? So give generously, as in, sometimes people give their book away very generously. Other times it might be give generously of your support for other people, or your time, or whatever. So it's really important to have that generous viewpoint and enjoy yourself. It's an amazingly enjoyable process. It's not necessarily easy at times, but if you just enjoy the process of learning while you're researching your book and writing your book, it's a bit like going back to university and doing assignments. It's like, when's this going to end? But there's a point to it, there's a purpose to it. And just enjoy the fact that you do going down this path. And don't be afraid to make money from it, for goodness sake. We are allowed to make money. And so with the make money, that's, how do you make money from a book? The sort of books we're talking about today, it's not necessarily book sales. As I said, many people give their books away because they know that if they give their books away, their books are going to go out and reach people that they would never be able to reach themselves. And then those people might come back to them for to offer them speaking gigs, or to invite them onto podcasts, or to invest in their programs. So your book is really ultimately one of your business tools to increase your perceived value, but also to bring people back to you for other things that you do that offer value. I guess it's a bit like my book, Smart Women Publish. It's like a handbook, how to publish a book. You could use that book, and I might never know who you are, and you might never come back to me, but it would help you write a book. But the fact I've written it also establishes me as a voice in that space. And some people will read the book or parts of the book and think, oh my God, I can't do that on my own. I do need to come back to Bev for help with whatever. So your book has to be part of a bigger thing within your business. Okay, I'll just stop there. Any questions on anything there?
If I don't know if you're going to talk about this, now or later, but as a book coach, how do you help from, do you help from the get-go to the end? Do you sometimes help when the book is written? And what does that look like? And
Okay.
if you can share, how much would that cost to engage a book coach?
Okay.
But, if you can't.
No, I've got a slide right near the end, so I'll just tack that on near the end. So we're
Right.
getting almost through. I've just got a couple of slides about that. Once you've got your book, you're ready to kind of step up into a bigger playing field. I mean, you might already be there. So your book, you might already be speaking and writing content, doing podcasts, whatever. So your book might just be an extra thing that you do, but a book can also be something that you can use to reach a bigger platform. So podcasting is really easy way, particularly in lockdown. Podcasts obviously are fantastic things. Speaking on stages or running your own events and going back to Zoom. You don't need to wait for somebody else to invite you to do something. Just set up your own programs or your own events or your own gatherings on Zoom or whatever, and just take the initiative, and your book will help you achieve that if it's something you haven't really done before. And I think it's really important to realize, if publishing a book or writing a book is something that is a real stretch for you, just think of all the other things you've achieved. I mean, it's one more thing that has a process. I think that's the good thing about publishing a book, is there's a process. Getting the content together might take a little while, but it's doable, and there's professionals to help you get that sorted. So a couple of freebies. Now, that's where you can go to find my book. Now, I'm not sure I guess you'll get a recording. Shall I send the slides? I can send the slides as a PDF, but if you wanted to just jot that down at the moment, so it's smartwomenpublish.com/extras. So if you go to that page on my website, you can download a PDF copy of the book. Plus, I've got 3 other things that are on there that are free resources. So there's a format for writing a book plan. There's the publishing process in steps and stages. There's a PDF for that. And there's one more thing, what goes on a book cover, that's there as well. So just go in there and help yourself to those if you would like those. And with the next slide, I'll answer your question now, Jessica, with this. You asked about book coaching. Now, I do run set programs. Every now and then, I don't have them running a lot, but if someone was interested in knowing more, that's where you could find more information. So as a book coach, with this book blueprint program, it's for somebody who's thinking about writing a book. So it really takes them through the process of figuring out, sort of getting that clarity about what would my best book be about? Who's it for? It helps you understand that audience, helps you figure out the structure within your book and figure out what journey you're going to take the reader on through your book. Helps you, it gets you starting to think about the marketing of your book. Like if you don't have an audience at the moment, how can you build your audience while you write your book? That sort of thing. So it's a good paced program. So people can do that with me as a group, or if an individual wanted to go through that same process, they could do that with me as an individual. So that's really all there on those pages. Like I said, recent clients had already started a book but got stuck. So that's another really good point that a book coach could help people with. Which I think happens quite a lot because people haven't planned out, or they've planned out a book they've sort of underestimated what they could actually achieve. So they planned something quite simple, and then they realise, actually, I could do something better than this, but they're not sure what that better is. So a book coach might be able to help them with that. If somebody's finished their manuscript but they want to check before they go to an editor, they could get a book review. So that could be something a book coach could help them with, like review the manuscript, knowing that the book coach might come back to them and say, look, hang on, you've got to make lots of changes here. So then they are prepared to put more time into it to make the changes. So that's likewise, an editor might do that sort of work as well. So that's sort of a crossover between book coach and editor, that process. So yeah, with a book coach might help people through the publishing process, the actual production process. And I guess that's because I've got a team of people. I do coordinate the team, so I'll coordinate the editing, I'll coordinate the design of the cover, the page layout. I set the book up on Amazon and put the files up myself. So, but a book coach might help someone with that process as well. So, did that kind of explain? So, in terms of cost, I mean, on that book coach page on my website, there's the costs are there because it's easier to put them up so people know what they're faced with before they contact people and find out later they couldn't afford them or whatever. But there's a huge amount of value in it. That's sometimes it's hard to articulate value, isn't it, in words. When you put something up on your own website, you know it's valuable, but you haven't really found the right words to articulate the value. But just an example of the lady I worked with recently, she had written some of her book, not a lot. At no time did I read what she'd written. I just helped her review what she'd written. So the fee for that was around $500, but she did most of the work. Like, she went through it and answered. I sent her the worksheet for the blueprint. So she went through the worksheet and did all the work. She sent that back to me and I went through that. And then she went back and did some more work. So that was around $500. But that was really, she got so much value out of that. Yes, so hopefully that helps.
That's great. Thanks, Bev.
So just if anyone does want to locate me apart from BWA, I'm also on LinkedIn. I'm easy to find. It's my details. Yes.